He was born in a place where dreams seemed forbidden. The houses were simple, almost improvised, made of roughly finished bricks and roofs that creaked with every gust of wind. The streets, when it rained, were no longer streets. They turned into rivers of mud, where each step sank along with the hopes of those who lived there. But amid this setting that seemed designed to erase all desire, there was something different about him. An insatiable curiosity, almost rebellious. While many settled for little, he looked up. He watched the stars as if they were open windows to something greater. He listened silently to the adults' conversations, not to gossip, but to learn. Any scrap of written paper that fell into his hands became a relic. That's how, one day, rummaging through what others had thrown away, he found an old book. Its pages were yellowed, its cover torn, but to him, it was like holding a treasure. In that moment, something changed. Carrying books in his pocket became his secret weapon against fate. While others kept stones, he kept words. While others protected themselves with silence, he shielded himself with knowledge. He knew he couldn't show too much interest. Studying too hard could be a reason for mockery, but the desire to learn was stronger than any fear. Each page read in secret was a small, silent victory. Afternoons after school became sacred. While laughter echoed from the dusty soccer fields, he sought refuge in hidden corners. An abandoned backyard, a shadow under a tree, even a space behind the house, any place could serve as an improvised classroom. The worn-down pencil in his hand was like a sword in battle. He copied formulas, repeated difficult words, wrote and rewrote sentences as if engraving powerful spells into his heart. There were no teachers, but there was discipline, no applause, but a flame burned inside him that refused to go out. Secrecy was essential. Studying too much, there could spark laughter, nicknames, even rejection. But within him grew a certainty no one could steal. Knowledge would be his bridge, an invisible bridge that crossed rivers of mud, walls of prejudice, fences of poverty. Every hidden minute with books was fuel for a future no one around him could imagine. While others saw just a distracted boy, he already saw horizons, and in the silence of those old pages, he began to write his own story, a story with no room for limits. There were nights when sleep simply wouldn't come. The tiredness was there, but the mind wouldn't stop. While the whole house slept, wrapped in ordinary dreams, he would rise quietly, like someone guarding a precious secret. The dim light lit up the pages, and in that absolute silence, every word took on the weight of eternity. Each line he read was more than learning. It was a pact with himself, a silent vow that, no matter the cost, he would not give up. The silence of the early hours was his ally, solitude his strength. There, with no witnesses, no applause, no easy promises, he fought his true battle to remain firm in the face of everything that tried to drag him down. The world didn't see, no one imagined. Too many, he was just a boy studying, losing sleep, wasting time. But inside him, each effort was a brick laid in the foundation of something far greater. The discipline, built in darkness and silence, became his invisible fortress, the base of a future he could already see, even if no one else believed in it. While some searched for shortcuts, he was building, night after night, a solid path. While others slept peacefully, he sacrificed precious hours, not out of obligation, but by choice. Because he knew the fruits don't grow by chance, but from the deep roots of persistence. And so, in the solitude of the night, he wasn't just studying, he was building. Stone by stone, word by word, formula by formula, he was raising the structure of an impossible that, sooner or later, would become reality. Prejudice was constant. At school, there seemed to be no space for someone who dreamed differently. Whenever he raised his hand to answer, the laughter came before he even spoke. They found it amusing that a poor boy would dare to take interest in science, in literature, in worlds that weren't written into his immediate reality. Each burst of laughter felt like a wall being built before his eyes. Many days he walked home with a heavy heart. The path felt longer when he carried the weight of disdain inside him. But instead of bending, he turned the pain into fuel. Every mocking laugh was stored, not as weakness, but as a reminder that he had something to prove. Those memories, painful in the present, he treated as scars in the making. Wounds that would one day become invisible medals, symbols of resistance. He knew to succeed would not only be a personal victory, but also a cry on behalf of all those who had been silenced, ignored, or humiliated for the simple act of dreaming. Carrying books in his pocket was his form of protest. a silent resistance against the fate others tried to assign him. Every page read was a weapon against ignorance. Every concept learned was a brick removed from the wall. They laughed while building, and with each passing day, his determination didn't fade. It grew stronger. The more they tried to dim his light, the more he shone within. What for many was a reason to mock was, for him, the right path, because deep down, he already knew. One day, they would all have to acknowledge that the poor boy who dared to raise his hand was building something far greater than they could ever imagine. On a rainy afternoon, the sky seemed to carry the same weight he felt in his chest. The muddy streets turned into thick rivers, and the sound of rain pounding on the rooftops was almost deafening. Along the way, he realized something was wrong. His book, carefully tucked in his pocket, was getting soaked. The drenched pages began to warp, the ink smudging as if the words themselves were trying to disappear. Anyone else might have thrown the book away. After all, it was just old paper, worn by time, but not him. With trembling hands, he pulled it from his pocket and with an almost sacred patience began to dry each page one by one, like someone rescuing a treasure from sinking into oblivion. In that moment, he realized the true depth of his dream. He didn't just want to learn, he wanted to preserve, to be the guardian of an invisible treasure made of words, ideas, and discoveries. The rain, which had once felt like a threat, became a revelation. There was no force in the world strong enough to extinguish his flame. Not water, not contempt, not poverty. He vowed silently that no obstacle would ever make him give up. If necessary, he would rewrite every lost word, rebuild every faded page. That rain didn't just wash the mud from the streets, it washed away his doubts. In that moment, in the middle of the storm, he understood that his life would not be shaped by what the world tried to impose on him, but by his unrelenting pursuit of knowledge. And so, with a wet book in his hands and a heart on fire, he sealed an eternal pact to never allow knowledge to be lost in his life. Over time, his study routine became more than just a habit, it became his identity. Every sleepless night, every page read with effort, every word scribbled in a worn-out notebook shaped not only his mind, but also his essence. It was as if each silent sacrifice etched invisible marks that, little by little, transformed him. There was a new light in his eyes now. Not the light of vanity, but the light of someone who carries within the certainty of building something greater. His voice had changed to steady, clear, and confident. And that confidence unsettled people. Many couldn't understand where so much conviction came from in a boy who, in their eyes, had so little. But what they failed to see was simple. His confidence wasn't born from applause, but from silence. It didn't come from recognition, but from discipline. He had learned to value every free minute. He turned waiting lines into reading time, the backyard into a lab of ideas, and the quiet of his room into a private classroom. There were no limits to his thirst for knowledge. What had once been just a pocketful of books now symbolized much more, the true wealth he carried. An invisible, indestructible wealth that no one could steal. To others, he might still have looked like just the poor boy who read too much. But inside him, there was already an unshakable certainty. He was building a fortune that couldn't be measured in coins, but in knowledge, and that was the only kind of wealth that time doesn't wear out, that rain can't destroy, and that prejudice can never erase. Poverty demanded its price every single day. It wasn't just the absence of things, but the constant weight of having to choose between basic needs and distant dreams. Many times, he studied on an empty stomach, feeling hunger gnaw at him like an invisible enemy. Even so, he didn't give up. Books were his shelter, his escape, and at the same time, his weapon against the harsh reality that surrounded him. The physical pain, which for many would be reason enough to quit, he transformed into discipline. The emptiness in his body became strength in his mind. Each page turned was a flame lit in the dark, a spark of hope capable of illuminating even the darkest moments. He spoke to books as if seeking the advice of wise elders. In the words of the authors, he saw secret mentors who seemed to whisper paths, strategies, and courage. They were silent voices that guided him when everything around him screamed failure. And so, even with nothing material, he discovered he carried the greatest wealth of all, the power of knowledge. A wealth that cannot be measured in coins, that cannot be stolen, and that grows the more it is shared. His body might have been weak, but his mind was growing stronger every day. In that poverty, where everything seemed limited, he found what had no limits. Knowledge became his true inheritance, his invisible fortress, his promise that the future would be different from the present. A teacher, attentive amidst the silence of the classroom, noticed something different about him. It wasn't just the quickness with which he answered, nor the ease with which he memorized formulas or texts. There was something deeper. He truly understood what he read, saw connections that went unnoticed by his classmates. His mind didn't just absorb, it transformed. The teacher, sensitive to this quiet brilliance, decided to encourage him. They were small gestures, but to him, they carried the weight of a miracle. Borrowed books, extra assignments, quiet advice whispered in the hallways. For the first time, someone looked at him, not with scorn or laughter, but with recognition. For the first time, his silent effort was validated. He was no longer alone. The solitude that had once been his fortress began to open up to something new. Support. Small hands reached out, showing him that the path of overcoming didn't always have to be walked alone. With every page read from a borrowed book, he felt his world expanding. With every word of encouragement, he realized it wasn't just his own strength that was driving him forward, but also the belief of someone who had faith in him. And in this way, he began to understand a simple but powerful truth. When allies come together, dreams that once seemed unreachable begin to turn into reality. The path didn't get any easier. On the contrary, it seemed that every achievement brought new challenges. He worked hard to help at home, studied when his body was already begging for rest, and still faced a silent and sometimes cruel judgment of those who didn't believe in his dreams. But instead of backing down, he learned to turn every minute into a learning opportunity. Any place became a classroom. The noise of the factory turned into a soundtrack for reflection. Work breaks became moments to read a few pages. Even the walk through muddy streets was a chance to mentally review formulas. Where others saw a heavy routine, he saw hidden opportunities. While many gave up in the face of hardship, he thrived in it. His resilience wasn't a pretty word from a book or a speech, it was lived. Forged through action, earned drop by drop, day after day. Every sacrifice became another layer of strength. Every fall, another reason to rise even stronger. Obstacles, to him, weren't insurmountable walls. They were invitations to push past his limits, to grow, to become greater than any barrier. And so, step by step, in the silence of difficult days, he proved that dreams don't belong to those who have everything, they belong to those who never give up. Over time, the fragile boy with the curious gaze transformed into a young man full of dreams and courage. He no longer studied just for himself, studying had become a mission, almost a calling. With every page he read, with every sleepless night, he felt he was carrying the weight and the hope of many others who, like him, were born in places where dreaming seemed forbidden. He wanted to prove, through his own life, that origin does not determine destiny. That it doesn't matter where someone comes from, but how far they are willing to go. Even if he was seen as the strange one who studied too much, he wore that title as a badge of honor. He knew that sooner or later, everyone would recognize the invisible force that drove him. He wasn't seeking easy applause. What guided him was the certainty that every effort could pave the way not just for himself, but for all those who would come after. Knowledge, which once had been just a refuge from pain, was now his banner. His weapon against ignorance, his living proof that the limits imposed by the world could be broken. And even without knowing it yet, his path was leading him toward something grand. The Nobel Prize, not as a symbol of individual glory, but as testimony that the books he once carried in his pocket had become bridges, wings, and light for the world. Because those who carry books in their pockets carry the possibility of turning the impossible into reality. And those who hold words in their hearts also hold the power to transform the world. When the time came to take the university entrance exam, the comments began to surface like stones in his path. It's too expensive. No one from here ever makes it. You should think about something more realistic. The phrases echoed like sentences, but he didn't let them break him. He saved the little money he had, worked odd jobs, sacrificed hours of rest, and studied harder than ever. The night before the exam, he could barely sleep, not out of fear, but from the anticipation of someone who knew how much they had prepared. It was as if every sleepless night, every scribbled page, every word repeated in silence had led him to that very moment. On the day of the exam, he looked around at the other students. New clothes, expensive backpacks, shiny top-of-the-line pens. He had only a borrowed pen and the same worn-out books he'd carried for years. But he didn't feel smaller. On the contrary, within him was an unshakable conviction. Nothing could replace those lonely nights of studying, the invisible sacrifices no one had seen. When he handed in the test, he felt at peace. And when the results finally came out, the impossible had happened. He was accepted. The victory wasn't his alone. It also belonged to every held-back tear, every night of hunger, every page saved from the rain. But deep down, he knew this achievement was just the first step. The real journey was only beginning. University brought new challenges. Modern laboratories shone like unknown worlds, immense libraries seemed like labyrinths of knowledge, and classmates spoke a language that, at first, felt incomprehensible. He felt out of place, almost like an imposter amid so much talent around him. Insecurity hit hard, but he remembered who he was and where he came from. Every doubt was fought with study, discipline, and courage. He spent hours immersed in books, taking notes, solving problems, even after long days of work to pay his expenses. Every page turned, every formula understood, every concept mastered became a silent victory, reminding him that no effort is in vain. The university, which once seemed unreachable, was now conquered territory. And he didn't just keep up with his peers, he surpassed them. His daily dedication made him stand out, and gradually the professors began to notice something extraordinary in him. It wasn't just intelligence, it was passion, discipline, perseverance, a talent that stood out but came from much more than opportunities. It came from silent sacrifices, sleepless nights, and the strength of a dream that never faded. Every challenge faced on campus was a reminder of his own transformation. From the boy who studied silently on rainy nights to the young man who now walked confidently among brilliant minds, ready to leave his mark on the world. It was in research that his passion finally blossomed. Learning what already existed was never enough for him. He wanted to go further, explore the unknown, discover what no one had dared to say. Every hypothesis tested, every experiment repeated to exhaustion was an adventure toward the impossible. Entire nights were spent among notes, formulas, and graphs, with mistakes becoming indispensable steps toward success. While many sought only good grades or easy recognition, he sought meaning. Every experiment had to bring impact. Every result needed to open new doors to knowledge. Gradually, his ideas began to attract attention. Publications in respected journals, invitations to conferences, recognition from experts around the world, but even with fame and applause, he never forgot his origins. Every scientific breakthrough, every award or mention was the result of sleepless nights hiding books in his pocket. Hours stolen from sleep and the courage to keep learning when no one believed. And, even receiving attention and praise, he maintained the humility that had always accompanied him. Studying had never been about status, compliments, or prestige. For him, studying always meant transforming the world, and that is exactly what his life and research began to do, silently and powerfully. His academic journey was never free of pain. Failures appeared, experiments failed, and sleepless nights piled up like small invisible scars. But he learned to see each mistake as a silent teacher offering lessons no book could provide. Every failure was an opportunity to grow. Every difficulty another step toward the future he dreamed of. This resilience caught the attention of international mentors, who saw something rare in his talent and invited him to join projects abroad. Traveling seemed like a distant, almost impossible dream, but there he was, crossing borders, facing culture shock, homesickness, and loneliness. Even in unfamiliar lands, he found in adversity the chance to grow stronger. He had learned since he was a boy that silence and solitude are not enemies, but allies. While many gave up under pressure, he blossomed. Every challenge faced far from home, every difficulty overcome, became fuel for his ambition and determination. With every step, he came closer to worldwide recognition. Every achievement was not just personal, but the sum of all the silent nights studying. Every page hidden in his pocket, every moment he believed in himself when no one else did. He knew every sacrifice had a purpose, and his story was living proof that perseverance turns obstacles into victories. The following years brought discoveries that changed not only his life, but also the way many understood science. His research pushed the boundaries of knowledge and helped solve real problems, bringing solutions to issues that once seemed impossible. He never sought academic recognition alone. His true goal was to make a human impact, to leave the world better than he found it. His publications gained prominence, invitations to conferences and international collaborations multiplied, and his name began to cross borders, recognized by experts around the globe. Yet, Despite all the fame and prestige, he remained the boy who, years ago, hid books in his pocket. Every award received, every applause or compliment, was accompanied by a silent reminder: the rain that soaked his first pages, the dim light that illuminated his lonely nights, the laughter and mockery that tried to silence him. These memories were his anchor, keeping him humble and steadfast. And it was precisely this remembrance of who he was and all he had overcome that kept him determined. Because despite worldwide recognition, he knew the true measure of his success was not in titles or medals, but in the power to transform lives through knowledge, courage, and perseverance. The pinnacle arrived almost silently, yet transformatively. One of his research projects produced unexpected and promising results, answers with the potential to change millions of lives. The world began to take notice of his work. Newspapers highlighted his discoveries, universities sought collaboration, and governments consulted his analyses. The recognition that had seemed so distant was finally drawing near. Even in the spotlight, he remained grounded. Every conference, every round of applause was met with humility, for in his mind still lived the boy who studied under a street lamp with worn books in his pocket and a heart full of dreams. For every victory, there were memories of hardships, the rain that soaked his first pages, the laughter that tried to silence him, the lonely nights that shaped his discipline. These memories served as a compass, keeping him from getting lost in vanity or fleeting recognition. He knew better than anyone that the spotlight of fame fades, but real contribution, the kind that transforms lives and opens paths, lasts forever. And it was precisely this legacy he sought, not awards or titles, but lasting impact. Living proof that knowledge, courage, and persistence can change the world. When the Nobel Prize nomination came, he could hardly believe it. The announcement instantly transported him back to the dirt roads of his childhood, to the simple houses, to the books that once got soaked in the rain, yet were still saved. Each memory mingled with the emotions of the present, reminding him of the voices of contempt, of the people who said it wasn't worth insisting, that dreams like his were impossible. He thought of his mother, who sacrificed everything so he could have a chance. Of the days of hunger, sleepless nights, and the moments when he carried books in his pocket like secret treasures. Each memory formed a mosaic of gratitude, a constellation of reasons that had brought him there. The nomination was not just about him. It was about all those who believe in the transformative power of knowledge, who persist even when no one believes, who keep studying when everything around seems to conspire against their dreams. It was a collective victory. Living proof that dreams are not measured by the conditions of origin, but by the intensity of persistence, by the courage to keep going even when all seems lost. In that moment, amid applause and flashes, he understood something profound. Every sacrifice, every tear, and every page hidden in his pocket had built not only his path, but also a legacy. A legacy showing that true greatness is born from those who never give up, who turn hardships into fuel and dreams into reality. On the day of the award ceremony, he felt a lump in his throat that no words could undo. He walked through the hall, filled with leaders, scientists, and officials, and with each step, he was transported back to the dirt roads, the simple houses, to the boy who hid books in his pocket, studying silently under the dim light. When he received the medal, the applause echoed inside him like a dialogue between past and present. Each clap seemed to answer the tears held back during nights of study, the mocking laughter that once tried to silence him, the rain that soaked his first pages. The tears came silently, not out of vanity, but from deep gratitude. The prize was not just the crowning of a genius or a rare talent. It was living proof that no obstacle can stop someone who believes in their own potential. It was a celebration of every silent sacrifice, every hour stolen from sleep, every page kept like a treasure. In that moment, he realized that true greatness was not in the medal, but in the journey, in the boy who had books in his pocket and courage in his heart, dared to believe he could change the world. In his speech, he spoke with a firm voice, yet filled with emotion, about life, struggle, and dreams. He reminded everyone that his greatest laboratory was not in imposing buildings or sophisticated equipment, but on the streets lit by a simple lamppost where he studied silently with worn books kept as treasures. And that the greatest teachers often were not found inside formal classrooms, but in pages saved from oblivion, full of knowledge and hope. He emphasized that education is humanity's most powerful tool, capable of transforming destinies and opening doors that once seemed impossible. His award was not just a medal or recognition, It was a reminder that every talent needs opportunity to flourish, and that dreams can become reality when persistence and effort come together. He became living proof that perseverance turns the impossible into reality. Every tear, every sleepless night, every obstacle overcome was represented in that moment, showing that regardless of origin or circumstances, great achievements are possible when one believes in their own potential. After the ceremony, he gently held the old book he had saved from the rain so many years ago. The pages were yellowed, worn by time, but the value they carried was immeasurable. That book, which had once been a refuge and a secret treasure, was now a symbol of his entire journey. From the boy who hid books in his pocket to the man receiving the Nobel Prize, his story proved that dreams cannot be destroyed by hardships, by others' laughter, or by endless nights of sacrifice. Every obstacle overcome, every page studied in silence, every held-back tear became the foundation of his achievement. The greatest victory was not in the medal, the applause, or the headlines, but in the perseverance that kept him strong when all seemed lost. He became a living symbol that knowledge, nurtured with passion, courage, and discipline, has the power to transform lives, change destinies, and illuminate the whole world. And as he flipped through those yellowed pages, he remembered every step that had brought him there, understanding that every sacrifice had been worth it, because in the end, it wasn't just about glory, it was about proving that the impossible can become reality when you truly believe.